On August 5th, 2011, Standard & Poor's downgraded the credit rating of the United States for the first time in our history. And they cited out-of-control debt and lack of a serious plan to address it as its main reason. Nearly a year later, the administration's done nothing to remedy this problem. As a matter of fact, sometime at the end of this year, we're going to run out of our ability to borrow money. It's called the debt ceiling. And I can't tell you today, because we're not told whether that's going to happen in October, November, December, January, but it doesn't go much past the end of the first of the year. And I sort of pity the next president, whoever that is. They're probably going to get inaugurated one day, and the next day they're going to have to come to Congress and ask for a $3 trillion increase to the national debt. And as difficult as it is for me to say, we're going to have to do it. The country has to have the capacity, the capabilities to borrow money to function. But you would think that with this all known, we'd take the opportunity now to begin to change the grotesque spending habits, to begin to prioritize the investments that we make, that we would attempt to reform the programs that cost us the most and lead to an unsustainable financial future for the United States. A country that will soon be $17.8 trillion in debt, that I won't be here to pay back, but my children and my grandchildren will. And you have to ask yourself as a parent, is that fair? And the answer is it's not. Now, instead of doing anything, last year the debt ceiling needed to be increased by $2.1 trillion. And we're about to blow through it. Why? Because we spend $1 trillion more on an annual basis than what we collect. There is no business, no family, no institution in the world that could spend $1 trillion more than they collect and be in business. Nor can this country. And the time is running out. And by the way, it's hard to put a calculation on $1 trillion. What is $1 trillion? Well, it's 100% of the federal investment in K through 12 education. It's 100% of the federal investment in higher education. It's 30% of the VA budget. It's 100% of the National Institute of Health. It's 100% of the cost of the National Science Foundation. It's 100% of the federal partnerships with states and localities for infrastructure, bridges, roads, sidewalks. It's 100% of our national defense. It's all branches of the military, active and reserve, all bases of the military, domestic and foreign. Comes up to about $942 billion. You want to balance this year's budget, we got to cut everything I just talked about and find $60 billion more just to balance this year's budget. Well, the takeaway from this is we're not going to delete our national security. We're not going to decrease our investment in National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation. We're going to be a partner in K through 12 and higher education. There's a lot of places we can cut and we can prioritize, and we should be doing it. But the takeaway is you can't get there unless you're willing to reform entitlements. Unless we're willing to look at where the majority of the money is spent, we can't get there. So we've got to do something. And I would tell you it starts with addressing the imbalance that we have in spending and collection right now, not next year.
We want him to have the last 5 minutes. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Madam President, consistent with this is the Senate still hadn't passed a budget. In fact, the President's own budget didn't receive a single vote in Congress when we voted on it. I shouldn't laugh. We're on track for another year with $1 trillion deficit. How could any company run their company on an annual basis without a budget, without a financial roadmap as to what they do? But now, for over 1,000 days, the United States Senate has not passed a budget. And the law says we've got to do it. That's incredible. It is absolutely incredible. And over the last 3.5 years, we've added $5 trillion to the national debt, more than in the previous 8 years combined, and current estimates by the CBO put federal debt at 70% of our gross domestic product by the end of this year. We are reaching irreversible levels of debt as it relates to the size of our economy. It is unsustainable, and it is dangerous for the fiscal health of our country. The status quo needs to change. Congress needs to address the impending fiscal cliff or risk another downgrade in the coming months. We can accomplish this by passing a budget that moves us towards balance. We can accomplish this by reforming entitlements and pushing Band-Aids on, not putting Band-Aids on issues for another time. Our debt will begin to decrease when we put the American people back to work and we get policies in place that encourage the investment of capital. How about something novel? Why don't we reform our tax code? Give me the ability to go to a small business in North Carolina and tell them they're going to pay exactly the same thing GE pays. It's hard for me to explain how they pay 36%, GE paid nothing. And I'm not faulting GE, don't get me wrong. That's exactly what the tax code currently says. That doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean we have an obligation to leave it like that in the future. I look at it as an opportunity for us to bring equity. But as we bring equity, why don't we bring everybody's obligation, their rates down? It's time for us to reform individual and corporate taxes in America, to do away with loopholes and deductions, to flatten the rates for everybody, to broaden the participation by more Americans. You know what? If we do that, we'll be like a magnet for global capital. What's it take to create jobs in the United States? It takes an investment. Reform the tax code, flatten the rates, broaden the base. You'll attract capital that will flee to America and create jobs like we've never seen. At a time where the world continues to try to figure out how to get out of a hole, we've got an option to do it. I'd like to yield for a second to the...
Unanimous consent?
Absolutely.
I appreciate the Senator.